In September 2025, the murder of Charlie Kirk unleashed a climate of hatred that shook not only the United States. And that same night, a simple woman, a grandmother from Ohio, died of a heart attack in her kitchen. And she was taken to Jesus, concerned by the events of the day before. And then he asked her to warn us of something crucial. Here, I want to tell you what was the message that Jesus gave to Margaret Ellis for all of us. Stay to see it, because this message is especially important. On September the 11th, 2025, the day after the murder of Charlie Kirk, in a small town in Ohio, the life of a 64-year-old, Margaret Ellis, seemed to end on the floor of her kitchen. She was a simple woman, a retired nurse, a happy grandmother. Her days were spent between the garden, the crucifix, the morning coffee, and the prayers while she washed the dishes. The night before, however, she had not been able to sleep. The murder of Charlie Kirk had shaken her. Margaret had cried, not because she followed his policy, but because she was in pain from the poison she saw on the television. Sitting on the couch, she cried for Charlie's family, for the murderer, and for a country that seemed to bleed in hatred. She stayed praying until late, asking God for a little peace. And the next morning, she had a feeling of weight on her chest, of anguish. She got up, went to the kitchen, opened the coffee can, and in that instant, she felt a pungent pain in her chest, like a hot iron. She couldn't even scream. She collapsed. It seemed the end, but it was actually the beginning of something much bigger. And suddenly, she was no longer on the floor. She was up, looking at everything from the ceiling. She saw her own body lying down, the broken coffee cup. And the strangest thing, she didn't feel fear or pain, just a strange calm. And then she felt a pull, and everything began to become small. And she was taken to a tunnel made of soft light. Everything was silent, a perfect silence. At the end, he was there, Jesus. But not like in the paintings. There were no umbrellas or clothes. His form was a bright light, a light that did not blind, that did not hurt, that felt like truth and home. But it transmitted sadness, a sadness so deep that made Margaret's pain the night before seem like nothing. It was the pain of a father watching his children be destroyed, and she felt it in all her being. Jesus did not speak to her with words. His thoughts came straight, clear, and soft to her mind. The first thing he said to her was, "Margaret, look what they are doing." And the visions began. First, a family at the table, the father shouting, the son returning insults with his fists closed, the mother with her eyes on the plate, the daughter scared. Then, a beautiful church on the outside, but broken inside. The faithful who had prayed together for years now shouted. Their prayers were weapons. And finally, the whole society, streets full of mistrust, neighbours looking at other neighbours with fear, each gesture asking in silence, "What side are you on?" In just a glance, Jesus showed her the root of her sadness. Humanity bleeding in discussions, losing peace, even in the most intimate. Jesus wanted the family to stop first. Margaret saw this scene more clearly. The father hit the table, red with anger. The university boy shouted at her with rage, with his hands clasped in his fists. The mother lowered her resigned head, and the daughter looked at them with fear, as if she knew that that family would never be the same again. And Jesus made her understand The enemy does not need to force the door when he is invited to the heart with his own words. And she understood that everything begins in the homes. The murder of Kirk was not an isolated event. It was the consequence of millions of houses poisoned by the division. Then Jesus took her to another scene, a whole society caught in the rage. It was not a particular country. It could be anyone. I saw endless discussions about flags, ideologies, leaders. People who used to be treated as brothers now turned into enemies. And Jesus told her with pain, "They have put a flag on my cross." Margaret understood that it was not just politics. The ideology had become a religion, and many used the name of Christ, but without his heart. They prayed, asking for human victories, not mercy. They asked for justice, not forgiveness. What she saw was a poisoned society, feeding day after day a fire of hatred. And the third vision was the most disturbing. Margaret saw an ordinary city. People were walking, but with distrust. Each look said, "Are you on my side or the other side?" And then she saw them. They were shadows. They had no horns or tails. They were like cold smoke stains stuck to people. They fed on hatred. Each insult, each poisonous comment on a cell phone made them bigger. Margaret saw a man reading his phone. A shadow whispered in his ear, and the man's face was deformed with anger. He wrote a message full of poison, and the shadow smiled, getting fat with that hatred. And Jesus said to her, "This is the real fight. They don't see it, but the enemy feeds on division. While my children attack, the darkness grows." And Margaret understood that they were not simple human discussions. They were food for the forces of evil. And after showing her everything, Jesus gave her the key. The murder of Charlie Kirk, who had moved the nation, was not the cause. It was just a symptom. That crime, he told her, is like the fever that appears in a poisoned body. It is the origin of the disease. It is the sign that the poison is already inside. And a dark river was shown to Margaret, a river of blood fed not only by deaths, but by bitter words, hidden resentments, prayers turned into weapons. And Jesus said to her, "The United States is standing on the edge of this river of resentment. But it's not just your country. The whole world is being poisoned by this current of hatred." She understood that what seemed to be a political problem was really a spiritual fight. Demons do not need tanks or armies when human hearts are already poisoned by resentment. And then Jesus gave her the remedy. It was something much simpler than a political strategy or a new law, but much more difficult to accept. "Go and tell them to love," he told her. "Hatred is the disease. Love is the only medicine." Jesus showed her that this means, in particular, to forgive the enemy, to pray for the one who thinks differently, to turn off the television that only feeds anger, to look the family in the eye and talk to them again with love, to make small gestures of mercy that cleanse the heart. Every act of true love, even if it seems insignificant, is a drop of living water falling into that dark river, and drop by drop is the only thing that can purify it. Margaret cried, "Sir, this is too big. How can it be changed with such small gestures? And Jesus replied tenderly, "Combat is not won with armies, but with a clean heart. I am with you." But then she felt the desire to stay. "I'm tired. I don't want to go back," she begged him, and Jesus looked at her with a smile full of tenderness, and he said to her, "Your work is not finished. Come back. Tell them I'm crying for what they do. Tell them that the only weapon that defeats this war is love." And suddenly everything changed. The light went out, and she felt that she was falling. The sacred silence broke with a deafening noise and returned. The first thing was a burning in the chest, as if swallowing fire. The second, the screams of her daughter, Jessica. "Mum, breathe. Mum, come back." Then the hospital lights and the smell of disinfectant. The doctors around her were astonished. She had been on leave for more than 20 minutes at home, another 10 minutes in the hospital. And yet she returned. The doctors were convinced that she must have brain damage, but she had none. For them, it was inexplicable. Not for Margaret. She knew she had returned with a mission. Repeat the message that Jesus had given her. That the real fight is not in politics or in the streets. It is in the heart of each person, and that the only remedy is the love that knows how to forgive. Well, so far the message that Jesus gave Margaret Ellis is to all of us after the death of Charlie Kirk. And may God bless you and always teach you to choose love over resentment.